Good day, ladies and gents, wherever you may be around the world, and welcome to Splendid Isolation number 57. As always, going to start us off with a bit of a tune.
You gentlemen of England who live at home at ease, how little do you dream about the dangers on the sea. So give ear unto us mariners, and we will plainly show all our fears and our care when the stormy winds do blow. Should enemies oppose us when England is at war with any foreign nation, we fear not one nor score, for our roaring guns do teach 'em our valor for to know. While she reels on her keel and the stormy winds do blow. And the sailor must have courage, no danger must he shun. In any kind of weather, still his course he has to run. Mounted on the high topmast, how dreadful 'tis below, as we ride with the tide and the stormy winds to blow. But when the danger is over and safe we come on shore, then the horrors of big tempests, well, we think on them no more, for they flow and all do invite us, and joyfully we go. Then all day we drink away, though the stormy winds do blow.
Okay, that was Ye Gentlemen of England, which is a 17th, 18th century song about both Royal Navy and Merchant Navy sailors. Okay, so I'll get on to our guests. And I think I'm going to do this reverse clockwise today because I think I know what John wants to speak about, and it's a relatively long topic. So we'll start off with George. George, how are you going? And do you have something you'd like to bring up as a first topic?
Oh, I'm doing very well, but unfortunately, I don't have anything really much to bring up. I saw the only thing even close to being interesting that I could bring up is that I saw a video in which someone basically estimated that more than half of the Tories now would want Boris Johnson to leave, which could imply that if there was a vote of no confidence in him tomorrow, the government would be deposed. So, general election on the horizon? Question mark.
No, that's wrong. There's no there is no need to have a general. If the Conservatives have a vote of no confidence, there is no need to have an election.
Yeah, but I know what George is saying here, John, and it's because I think Rees-Mogg said that would be the case. I don't know why he said that, but there you go.
I understand that, and what Rees-Mogg has said is technically correct in that there has been a modern precedent set in recent years. However, it's not a historical precedent. And so
it depends on the manner of the no confidence, I suppose.
The reason Rees-Mogg has said that is in order to quell some of the jitters within the party and basically say, look, you're acceleration, this is accelerationist, and you're going to end up losing your seats potentially because you want to make a fuss now rather than wait for a more opportune moment.
Yeah, I mean, understanding your meaning, are you thinking of a vote of no confidence within the Tory party? Because I was thinking more of a House of Commons wide.
Oh, yeah, okay. No, I see what you're saying there, George. Now, yeah, I'm not sure.
Because, I mean, Labour, of course, will always vote for a vote of no confidence.
Well,
what would it be on, though? I mean, surely they can't. It can't be just a backbencher say, "Oh, we're going to do a vote of no confidence."
The Conservative Party, if it comes to something like that, they will never vote in favour of it. They would do one internally. I'm sure they would do one, and it's looking increasingly likely that they may get to the point where they do, but they will not do a House of Commons wide vote of no confidence. No way.
Yeah, perhaps I misunderstood it, because my understanding is that there is a good amount of Conservatives who would vote with Labour on a vote of no confidence.
I doubt.
I strongly doubt that.
Yeah, I doubt it, because it's their seats that would be up for grabs. So that would be kind of cutting off your nose to spite your face.
Yeah. Anyway, there's not much else for me to bring up apart from that. It's not been a very eventful week. So,
to be fair, he has put all of his MPs in very awkward positions. I can understand why there'd be a lot of frustration against him within the party.
Well, I would just say that I've got two topics this week that I want to bring up after everyone else is finished, and one of them is going to be about that. So we will talk about that a bit later in the stream. And also what George Owell in the chat has just said. Adamant, did you have a particular subject you wanted to bring up this week?
Yeah. Plant your potatoes, lads. It looks like we're in for tough times ahead. I just thought it was funny because like we had, I think it was Wednesday. It might have been Tuesday. I'm pretty sure it was Wednesday. We had, there was like 3 publications that did articles about the incoming sort of increase in living costs. And it very much followed in the same vein of these sort of copy articles we saw in America, sort of maybe 6 months ago, when their inflation was, not looking great. And it was kind of funny because off the back of that, there was also a whole series of articles saying, well, Rishi Sunak had no control over this. He's you know, as if to like sort of you know, cover him, as it were, which I thought was a bit odd. I mean, I saw at least Sky News and the Telegraph running articles that were sort of in that vein.
This is going to be a good segue, Adam, because I know John wants to talk about this to some degree as well.
Yes.
So you do carry on, Adam.
Well, I mean, I don't know. The thing is, right, like Sunak is like, this is the other thing as well, because I think we brought up before, like there are articles saying that also, you know, Rishi Sunak is being told or forced to drop all the lockdown stuff, but he's not a Randian like Javid, but he's not. He like he campaigned on Brexit, right? But he campaigned on free ports, right? He's one of these like globalist Brexiteer types, right? He wants Britain to be like Singapore in a number of ways, but then not like Singapore in a bunch of other ways. And so he doesn't like, and I mean, I'm probably misremembering, but going back to the sort of beginning of the lockdowns, I remember him being kind of against a lot of this stuff and kind of having his hand forced slightly. He wanted
my problem with that line of thinking, and you're absolutely right, Ataman, and I've seen a number of stories recently where they've kind of briefed that Rishi wanted to do one thing, and then a couple of weeks later, it's kind of like you see Rishi's actually pushing through the thing he supposedly didn't want to do. And, you know, Sajid Javid resigned when it came to compromising his principles, whatever his principles were. He felt he couldn't possibly compromise them and he had to resign. Sunak, if he is some kind of free marketeer, you know, global Hong Kong kind of figure, has gone very much against that with all of the furlough and everything like that. If at any point he felt any of his principles are compromised, he could have and should have resigned, but he chose not to. So that says to me that his principles weren't compromised and therefore his principles aren't free marketeer.
Yeah, although I will also point that he was a hedge fund guy for a group called, I think it's called the Child Management, which had nothing to do with children, oddly enough.
Adam, your sound's going a bit iffy for some reason. Yeah, now it's better.
Okay. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, fine now.
So he was a hedge fund guy for this group called the Child Management Trust or something, which had nothing to do with children. And
Child Management.
Yeah, it had some sort of, it was child something management something or other, and all they seem to do, they're technically a charity, but all they seem to have done is helped companies with hostile takeovers and donate money to Extinction Rebellion. And that's all I could find out about.
Isn't Sunak a billionaire by all accounts?
But his wife is the daughter of one of India's biggest billionaires.
Oh,
and funny enough as well, he's one of the companies that the steel companies that did one of these forceful takeovers with the help of this company that he was a hedge fund for, was deeply connected with his father-in-law.
Wow, what a surprise!
What we can say though is that he worked at Goldman Sachs.
Yeah.
That's not a good sign.
As a senior, I believe he was pretty senior in the analyst positions, and those sort of people make £10 million a year, not included bonuses.
Yeah, it's a very well-paid job. Yeah.
So he's had a good time, and
he's not short of a bob or two, is
no, he's really not. Yeah. I mean, he's had he has a pretty pristine CV because he also he'd studied economics in America or something like that.
Yeah.
He's very well to do. I think he's one of the Brahmin families, but don't quote me on that.
I'm sure he is, but I mean, also like when he eventually gives up being chancellor, he'll have all these companies who all want him on their board. And he'll be making money for basically doing very little apart from giving his name to stuff afterwards. So you know, he's basically like silver spoon all the way.
Yeah, he might even outdo me on that.
I think he probably would in terms of like cash for sure.
I'm joking. He almost certainly does.
Isn't he the richest MP? I think it was Jeremy Hunt, wasn't it? But it's now Sunak.
I know nothing about Jeremy Hunt, so
I am always very dubious. Like, the one thing that I thought British politics was a little bit better than American politics was that American politicians seem to become multi-millionaires if they stay in long enough, which I always thought was like a big sign of corruption, and that didn't used to be the case so much in the UK. And it certainly does seem to be becoming more and more so today, sadly.
Well, historically in the UK, obviously, a lot of MPs had already made their money. The only reason,
if you go back 100+ years, absolutely, yeah.
I mean, it's an interesting question though, because a lot of people say that like we should pay MPs more to stop them getting their money from lobbying. But the main question I would have is that like, would it really make a difference if I get paid 60 grand versus 100 grand over whether I'm going to take lobbying efforts which pay me another 200 grand? So,
it won't stop lobbying at all. I agree. I think that's a complete fudge. What I would prefer is that MPs were paid nothing and you cleared out the riffraff.
Yeah.
The people that couldn't afford to do it otherwise.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know. I mean, I suppose it was like when the first Labour Party MPs got into Parliament, they were being paid a very limited amount of money. I think MPs started getting a small amount of not payment but expenses in the 1890s, if I remember correctly.
I don't know.
And like the very early Labour Party MPs were mostly paid by unions.
Yes.
And if you can find someone who will do that for you, I suppose I've got no objection to
that. No, but you can't imagine someone like Angela Rayner getting a job in the House of Commons, can you? If
a lot of modern MPs of all times, actually, I can think of who shouldn't really be in Parliament.
There's an awful lot of people who wouldn't be there were it not for the sort of 85 grand a year salary, I'm sure.
Yeah. Baron Badger in the chat is saying MPs only got paid since the 1920s. I think you're right about that, but they started getting expenses payments quite a while before that, actually.
Was it? Yeah, I'm sure it was earlier than that.
Yeah, they got expenses payments. It wasn't called a salary, but like if they had to do travel,
didn't they start paying MP shortly after the Chartism movement though?
No, I don't think they did.
Am I right in thinking that there was a point where MPs were given something really trivial? I don't know if it was something as trivial as vegetables or something for their trouble. It was really stupid. It was, but this is a long time ago.
Yeah, what I think the confusion here is, Baron Badger, is that we're not talking about salary. We're talking about the fact that MPs started to be able to charge for some expenses before that. It wasn't a salary. It wasn't called a salary, but they were getting some expenses payments prior to the 1920s.
But I mean, on the lobbying thing, and to take this back to Sunak, he was a Fulbright scholar at Harvard, and I only just found out quite recently. But the Fulbright scholarship gets its money from the US Congress, which I thought was quite bizarre. But I mean, is there a position to maybe just treat him as a foreign agent?
Well, I mean, you could do that regardless of the American stuff.
I do that anyway, and it's something I'm going to speak about when everyone else is finished. But yeah, I think Adam, unless you've got anything else you'd like to bring up first.
No, I'm good.
All right, well, we'll move on to John, because I know John wants to talk about.
I've got a bee in my bonnet at the moment.
Yeah, I know he wants to talk about the Bank of England and inflation, and
that's
people telling the public not to go for pay rises.
Okay,
so
yes.
Go for it, John.
So 3 to 6 months ago, the Bank of England, the Bank of England meets regularly, as it does, to discuss, the economy and interest rates in particular. And 3 to 6 months ago, They met and they were discussing the rates of inflation, and the majority of them voted against raising the interest rate, and they didn't feel that inflation was going to go much beyond what it was at the time, which was something in the region of 2.5% to 3%. They've since changed their position. They now believe that inflation is going to peak at 7.25%, which is possibly still conservative. But they also decided to raise the interest rate, which, I mean, has been a long time coming, realistically.
It's about time.
But what they said off the back of this, or what one of the particular governors said off the back of this, is that basically people shouldn't ask their bosses for big pay rises, because by doing so they would cause inflation. They would cause an inflation spiral, i.e., if there's wage inflation, then there'll be price inflation, then there'll be wage inflation, then there'll be price inflation. And I'm a big fan of Enoch Powell, and this is a subject that Enoch Powell waxed lyrical about back in the 60s and 70s, because England had a price and incomes policy, and the government was heavily involved in trying to play off workers against companies. They encouraged the workers not to have pay rises, and under the guise of patriotism, and you're doing it for the country, and they encouraged the employers not to raise prices, and equally not to raise wages. And the whole thing's ridiculous, and it belies the fact that they don't really believe in capitalism at all. They believe in a socialist command economy, and they believe that the worker is who is the person that causes inflation. Whereas, the reality is that globally, every country in the world for 2 years has hamstrung its economy and then printed millions of whatever denomination they happen to be in.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I can't think of a bigger cheek than to tell like low-paid workers not to put in for a pay rise when the Bank of England's money machine has been going brr, 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 brr. It's just crazy.
Bear in mind that, and I don't like to normally do this, but bear in mind that this chap earns £575,000 basic a year as well.
I mean, it's very interesting that you bring this up, because actually, as part of my studies, I was reading a few papers about inflation, and basically the long run correlation between average price rises and the money supply is approaching 1. It's like 0.98, which basically means that it's not workers' fault if they want more money.
Well, it's never workers' fault. It's never workers' fault. It is because we have a fiat currency, and it is because the Bank of England will print money at the government's behest. They either ignore.
I just want to point out to the people watching that, like, John is not talking out of his rear end here. John actually works in the financial sector, so
So this is one of the things I was talking about last night. So they're saying not to ask for a wage increase because that will put prices up. But I know full well that everyone in the manufacturing industry, especially companies that work to standard costs, which a lot of companies still do, has already baked in what they think is the likely inflation for this year into their standard costs for this year. So they've already priced their products accordingly to pass on whatever inflation they feel is likely to be in the market to the customer. And part of that inflation includes the cost of goods, and part of the cost of goods is labor. So they have already baked in a wage increase, whether they give one or not. So all you are doing by telling people not to petition their employer for the wage that they may or may not be worth is lining the pockets of business.
I think it's pretty common knowledge these days that the major cause of inflation is inflating the money supply.
That is the only cause of inflation.
Yeah, but I think that's pretty common knowledge these days.
Inflation is not in isolation. Like, inflation is the the full spectrum of the economy. It's not, oh, the price of eggs went up, that's a sign of inflation. No, it's as a general rule, the entire economy has experienced inflation. It's not an isolated phenomena. It's a macro phenomena, not a micro phenomena.
Well, I mean,
And
so Duke just said, I'm pretty sure it's common knowledge, but actually, I mean, so my main knowledge is in economics.
It isn't common knowledge. That's the problem.
Is that most economists these days would describe inflation as the rise in average prices,
which it isn't.
It is and it isn't. But the main reason they call it the rise in average prices is because they don't think anymore that it's really money supply. They think it's things like, well, a lot of things can influence it, including things like fluctuations in the oil price, and all that sort of things, like global logistics costs and things like that. And what they conveniently ignore actually is the empirical evidence, which suggests no, actually, over the long run, it is completely to do with the money supply.
Yes. And this is something, the monetarists of this world have been, and I don't necessarily agree with them entirely. I think I fall more into the Austrian camp. But the monetarists of the sort of 50s, 60s, 70s, this is exactly what they talked about. And one of the other things they talked about is one of the key drivers of inflation is full employment, because a lot of governments, certainly back in the 60s and 70s, were basically involved in essentially make work schemes. And they were involved in those make work schemes because full employment was seen as desirable. But of course, all they ended up doing is printing money to pay for the make work schemes, which drove inflation. And one of the things Enoch Powell said, and Thatcher later did, was that when you get rid of this stuff, you are going to have a period of unemployment. But that will stabilize, that will adjust. The market will adapt to that free labor, and it will adjust accordingly. And that's what happened in the under the Thatcher government, when they had a reset effectively, and you saw a period of unemployment, and then the market stabilized. The market understood that there were free bodies available for work, and it adjusted accordingly. And sorry, to link that back to the present day, what we had the last 2 years was the government basically involving itself in a make work scheme, although it didn't actually produce anything, in the form of furlough.
Yeah, I mean, look, we've. I think there's quite a lot of stuff out there about, the Great Depression in the 1930s and how FDR's so-called New Deal, which basically was a load of make-work schemes, actually extended it, and the only thing that really stopped it eventually was World War II. It wasn't the New Deal.
Well, yeah. I mean, there's quite a lot of evidence to show that it probably would have just kept going. But yeah, the thing is, I don't really know where I was going with this. Like someone brought up in the chat about imagining the 10 more years of austerity. I mean, one of the other things, of course, was that the austerity we went through before was not even really austerity.
Well, it wasn't austerity. We still ran a deficit every single month.
Yeah.
That's not austerity.
It was a tiny amount that they cut overall, but
yeah,
I think they also cut it from the worst possible places. But
oh yeah, it was like, I mean, there were much better places to look at it from. I mean,
did you miss out on some social clubs, Ataman? Is that what? Yeah.
Yeah.
No youth centres for you lads.
No table tennis. Yeah,
just couldn't help. Atman, deprived of his youth clubs, instantly committed a knife.
Well, what they did do, of course, after 2008 was they vastly cut defence spending. But then, of course, defence spending is relatively small in UK. What they didn't cut was the enormous amount of social security and NHS spending. They didn't touch any of that.
Well, yeah, I mean, this is one of the things I like attacking the old Americans on, if they're ever getting uppity, and they'll talk about oh, well, if people actually, the Republicans actually cared about the economy, they'd cut defense, and it's like, well, maybe, who cares? But you could cut the entire their
Defense
entire
is
Department of Defense, and it wouldn't put a dent in their in their debt.
defense is one of the only make work schemes that government should be involved in, as far as I'm concerned.
But also let's be clear about this. Like, UK defence spending is in no way, shape, or form on the same sort of scale as American defence spending.
No, UK's under or around 2%. What's America? Is it like?
I think the NHS budget for like a month is not much less than the yearly British defence spending budget.
On UK defence spending, it is above 2%. It's like a 2.7, and the United States.
I don't think it's that high, is it?
Yeah, it is. I was actually.
Yeah, but don't forget, George, they're fiddling it. Because what they do is included in defence spending these days, and it wasn't until relatively recently, is all UK defence pensions.
I was literally just going to say, right. I bet it's pensions.
That would make sense, because I saw the numbers on Wikipedia, and it's at 2.7%, and so I followed through into the MOD, and I was like, that's quite high, and that does put things into a bit more context. United States, however, it's at 3.4%, which is like sizable, but it's not like beyond.
I suppose it's all in proportion, though, right? Like 3.4% of a lot bigger number is a lot bigger number than 2% of a smaller number.
Yeah. But like I said, the UK defence spending, real defence spending, is actually much closer to 2% than 2.7%.
I think I saw something the other day that said our NHS budget is what China spends on its military.
Yeah, wouldn't surprise me. Surprise me at all.
Wasn't it the case that in the 18th century, like the Royal Navy alone got like 30% of all tax income?
It would have been the biggest. It would have certainly been the biggest thing the British government spent on.
Although bearing in mind that at that point, taxable income would have been nothing more than 10% of revenue.
Yeah, it would have been very low, because there wasn't even income. There wasn't even income tax back then.
Well, no, I was about to say that tax was only on imports, but essentially at
just
that point,
import tariffs and nothing else.
which makes a lot of sense, right? That the import tariffs you take gets ploughed back into what's helping you bring those things in, right?
Yeah.
Guys, can I just answer Bolero 393 in the chat? He's asking when the Franklin is streaming next. The Franklin normally streams on an Australian Sunday, which is today. So you may find he streams today. Okay? Sorry, guys, carry on.
I don't know. To kind of wrap up my point on inflation and pay rises, is that basically as a participant in a economy, it is your responsibility to ensure that you are paid adequately for the job that you perform,
and if you don't, move to another job,
and you shouldn't take the advice from someone who wouldn't settle for your wage to settle for your wage,
except doing your job.
Exactly. Exactly. Do not take advice from people who wouldn't stoop so low as to do your job, or maybe do, because then you'll be paid what they're paid, right?
I mean, I have a relatively silver spoon background, but I spent a year in a pub lifting kegs. I was very proud of the work I did, and I enjoyed it a lot. But there is quite a lot of disdain in the sort of the established classes for the sort of job I did.
Yeah.
Look, I think it is the responsibility of every human being to better themselves. I'm a Christian. I take inspiration for that from stories like the parable of the talents. I think every human being has been endowed with, a blessing from on high, as it were, and it is your responsibility to magnify that and to give back more than what you were given. And I think, when it comes to work, when it comes to a job, don't ever settle for less than what your output is worth, because you think you're benefiting some ethereal vague notion of patriotism or something like that. That's a total load of nonsense. All you're doing is participating in the misallocation of funds, which distorts the market.
I would say, look, people have been saying the Radical Liberation, Radlib, has been doing some good stuff on inflation recently, and he always does.
Radlib is very good. I said on my channel yesterday.
Yeah.
He knows more about this stuff than I do. I appreciate the fact that it's still a hobby for him. I don't think it's his day job. I think he's in sort of like IT.
Yeah. But he is very good. You're
but
right.
he knows his stuff.
Yes,
he knows
he
it
does.
far better than I do. He can get into a lot more of the detail than I can.
Yeah, and the other channel I would say people should look at if they want to get an idea about the inflation and hyperinflation is TIK, T-I-K, is doing a good series at the moment about the German hyperinflation after World War One. And he's on episode 2 at the moment, I think, and that is worth watching too.
I can't endorse everything Tick says.
No, me neither. He used to be a leftist. He has said as much, and I wasn't surprised to see that because I knew he was, but he's not a leftist now. The 2 episodes I've seen so far on hyperinflation in Germany after World War One have actually been good, and I would say go and watch those at least. And I don't agree with everything he says.
Yeah, this is the thing. Truth is truth. It doesn't matter where you find it.
Yeah, I mean, look, if I only said go and watch somebody who I totally agree with, that'd be about, I don't know, maybe I might find 5 people.
Go watch Splendid Isolation, everyone.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, actually, it wouldn't be that bad, but you know what I mean. It would be like I don't agree totally with any of the guys on this stream, but I count all of them as kind of mates, and we broadly agree, shall we say?
Yeah. I'm just saying that in reference to the guy has historically said some pretty strange stuff to me. I thoroughly disagree on his diagnosis of Nazism, for example. But
well, I agree that they were socialists.
Debatable, but
I think they were called the German Workers' National Socialist Party for a reason. But there you go. That's just me.
A lot of what they did was very socialist in nature. I'm happy to say that.
It was, and I believe that the SS, for example, were not totally unbased on the NKVD, which is what eventually became the KGB.
KGB,
yeah. I don't disagree with that. I think he's actually right about that. I think that's one of the major differences between Italian fascism, which of course was much older than German National Socialism, and German National Socialism. They were 2 different things. And if you read Paul Gottfried or you watch some of the stuff he's produced on YouTube, for example, Paul Gottfried is one of the best intellectuals on the right these days, in my view. He did this great book about Italian fascism, and he makes the distinction between that and what the Austrian painter guy was doing. It was a very different thing.
Yeah, it was, but I would actually, I'd probably say that the Italian one was probably closer to socialism than the German one.
But this is where I disagree with you, Armand, because yes, absolutely. The original fascists mostly started out as Marxists or socialists. Absolutely, they did. But I think that's also true in Germany.
The thing is, I don't know how far we want to go into this. So the thing is with the German model, though, is it was. I'm not even really sure if the term corporatist fits it very well, but they very much allowed some enormous. In Germany, they allowed some absolutely enormous companies to stay.
Well, but hold on. They allowed that insofar as those companies served the state, and by the state, sorry, I say the people, and by the people they mean the state as a whole.
Yeah.
The people were permitted to operate those factories, but only insofar as they towed the line.
Yeah, and gave enormous donations to the party and
but it
very
was
high
much
tax
more.
rates.
It wasn't so much. When like the communists say like, oh, the people, and it's like wink wink, actually the state. With the Germans, it was more actually just mask off. Yeah, it's the state.
Oh no,
They
they were very into the whole the
oh
Vulcan,
yeah,
Yeah,
and they did the
yeah, yeah.
whole. I mean, there's that particular part of
Ein
Uncle A's
Volkine, right?
speech
All
where
that kind of stuff.
he says
One people,
yeah, well,
one state.
he says like any German person can make it even to the highest office in the land. You know, and he does that whole sort of one people equality, blah blah blah. But
What I would say is they're not Marxist. They're definitely socialist in the same sense that the BUF were very socialist, and corporatist is probably an accurate description of how they viewed the role of the market within the state and
Well,
business within the state. It is different to Marxism, I'll give you that, but it is socialist, 100%.
I would just say that like corporatism was the absolute basis of Italian fascism, for example.
I mean, maybe this. I mean, like again, I think my main disagreement with Tech over this is actually it's to do with the fact that definitions, because it I mean he comes from a sort of historical point of view on it, like socialism is this, whereas like, well, actually it's different things to different people, and I guess that makes me sound like a postmodernist.
Yeah.
But in a way, it is kind of true that words are adaptive in their meaning, and so this is where my issue is. But that's all I really wanted to say. I didn't want a huge digression.
No, listen. I just think it's worth saying that socialism, communism, which are basically, or used to at least be basically the same thing. They're not regarded as the same thing these days, but actually they started off as being synonyms.
Well, Marx would have said that socialism is just a step on the way to communism, right? It's same with capitalism. He believed that was a stepping stone on the way to communism too.
So that's kind of dictatorship of the proletariat. I think that if you look at fascism in the Italian style, that was kind of national socialism. Whereas if you then look at the German so-called National Socialist Party, that's more race socialism. They're all like degrees of the same shit, in my opinion. But
although to put the cat amongst the pigeons, I'll also say I don't like the term capitalism.
Yeah, capitalist is just not a very helpful term.
Oh,
yeah, it's got like a built-in critique from Marxism, like into it.
Yeah, it has, which has been adopted by everyone up to and including the so-called British Conservative Party.
Yeah, but this is the thing, though, right? Like the critique of it isn't actually that fair when it's applied to the free market, which is what half the people using the term capitalism mean.
Yeah, that's what I mean. But we haven't had a free market for donkey's years in the UK.
No, well, yeah, very long time. And the other half of the people that are using it are advocating for a lot of the policies that actually create the outcomes built into that critique as well. So it just seems to be a completely worthless term at this point.
Well, I don't know how else to describe it. I mean, look, I am a capitalist in the sense that I believe that people should be able to set up their own companies and expand them. What I'm not but I'm not a corporate globalist, which is to say multinationals control everything. That I think is where the real.
Well, I mean, I'll often refer to myself just as like a local free marketeer or something along those lines.
Yeah, that's perfectly all right, Armin, and I understand where you're coming from with that. But I think we need to make some sort of distinction on the right between actual capitalism and a free market and the system we have now, which is by no means a free market. Even in America, the state interferes with everything. And in UK, it's even worse. And it has been for certainly ever since the Second World War and even before, actually going back to the First World War in UK's case. This corporate globalism, which is like multinational companies, which have no loyalty to anything or any place.
Speaking of corporate net, I had to drive into town today, and my local council recently spent an awful lot of money, I'm sure, installing these kind of electronic billboards and things. And I'm just driving along, and I come to a red light, and up pops a HSBC advert, and it's the world is a better place without borders. And I was sat in my car and I just swore, and I'm not usually given to swearing.
You need a rock.
Just get lost. Get
The
lost.
funny thing about that those
Total-
HSBC adverts is that they had that it crowd, the IT crowd actor doing the adverts for them, and they do a whole series of adverts on that about not having borders and buying foreign TVs and owning foreign dogs. And the funny thing is they put up they had to change 2 of their borders because they put them up in the wrong places. They put like the border for Norwich in Portsmouth, I think.
I thought borders didn't matter.
And they had to swap them all around. And I thought that was that was pretty ironic that this supposedly blank slate globalist world that such a small detail suddenly matters.
Mm.
Duke's gone. Where's he gone? Stream's ours.
Right, we can do what we like. Let's drop some drop some slurs.
Right, guys, let's talk about my favorite artist of all time.
I think you mean architect.
Yeah, look. I mean, I think we can mostly agree on the fact that all of these totalitarian states had a good deal in common, to be honest.
There is something. I mean, we have probably an over-reliance in regard to referring to sort of 1984, but I just thought it was something terribly Orwellian about me pulling up at a traffic light to see a billboard that I've paid for with my, council tax, to be projected messages about how I'm basically a racist because I actually quite like the fact that the UK is a, notionally a nation state. It's such a surreal thing. It just struck me as I was sat in the car, and I just thought, this is such a load of crap.
Yeah, it's been getting me quite down to the point that, like, about 5 minutes ago, I just had a quick look through my YouTube watch history, and it was all just Ted Kaczynski memes.
Mango in the chat says NatWest is a lesbian no borders bank. I remember going to my bank, which is the ANZ, Australia New Zealand Bank, and they while I was using the ATM, they give you adverts, and one of them was, if you're a LGBTQ business, we want to back you. Why? Let me just say, this was nearly 2 years ago.
Yeah, I would quite like to go back to a time where you go into work and you get your paycheck and it is a literal envelope of money, and you don't have to have anything to do with these stupid, globalist banking cartels.
I used to quite like getting my pay in a packet at one stage many years ago. You could do what you liked with it then. It didn't go for a bank. But of course it doesn't suit governments, because governments want to cashless society, because that will give us no privacy whatsoever.
No, well,
and they can control everything.
This is what Bitcoin is about, and this is what I'm convinced Bitcoin is about. I'm convinced it is. I think the only reason it's been tolerated the only reason governments tolerate anything like this, because they don't normally, because you look up something like the Liberty dollar for an example of what governments do when they feel like their money supply is threatened. The only reason governments tolerate stuff like this is if they've got something to gain from it. And I think the purpose of Bitcoin is to acclimatize people to money in the form of blockchain, and governments will then piggyback off of people's confidence in it to provide their own solutions, which of course will give government even more oversight over your daily dealings.
Yeah, you won't be able. Sorry, carry on,
exactly,
George.
Sunak said that you would do exactly that. Like there's Bitcoin coming up or whatever. It's
Yeah, exactly. Sunak's wet dream is having the ability to oversee every single transaction that anyone in the UK would make, and also to be able to manipulate those transactions. So, you know, when you see stuff like the government want to incentivize, you know, people making healthy choices by giving them, you know, vouchers for you know, various things, money off of food or whatever. It's like it's not too far of a leap to go the other way and to see oh well, you've spent money on something we don't approve of, so we're going to limit your access to that money, or you know, oh, you're buying a bit too much junk food this month. We're going to restrict you to only spend 10 Bitcoin on that next month rather than the 20 you spent this month.
Or you've gone over your you know, you're not doing net zero. Sorry, you're getting half as much money this week.
Of course, one of the biggest things about having a cashless society is it allows them to deflate artificially. And of course, what happens with deflation is that you either spend your money, thereby in their view stimulating the economy, or your savings reduces in value. They literally, I mean, you know, almost a bit like inflation, but kind of the other way. They literally just reach into your bank account and cream some money off the top.
I mean, inflation is basically just stealing people's savings anyway.
Inflation is one that you don't see directly. Deflation, if they had a cashless society, is one you'd open up your bank account and you'd see, oh, HMRC's or you know, the bank has said, oh no, today your £1,000 in savings is now £950 in savings.
Yeah, I have seen that, John, and I've seen Radlib, for example, talking about this, and it is one of the things that I think is absolutely coming. Certainly, the what's it called, Klaus Schwab's lot have been talking about doing this.
Yes, well, quite a lot of these people are
the World Economic Forum.
Young up and comers, aren't they? The likes of Jacinda Ardern, Justin Trudeau. They were all in that club.
Yeah, and Jacinda Ardern used to work for Tony Blair. She was an intern with Tony Blair, who of course started off in university as a Trotskyist.
The Sith always work in twos, don't they?
Yeah, apparently.
Yeah. So meat ratioing. Great comment. No, but he's right. I mean, one of the to take our previous comments about Germany and just take this completely into Fed posting territory. You know,
no!
It's
not too far.
Don't do it,
please.
It's just...
YouTube channel.
Now you shall all know who my favorite artist is.
Like, I mean, obviously, there's this.
Have you got any books you would like to preserve, Ataman?
Preferably one with no paragraphs.
Sorry,
yeah.
Ataman, carry on, man.
Mein Kampf by the mid-century German.
No.
I can't remember the other
There
book
is this
that guy
book
brought
called
up.
My Struggle, and it's so inspiring, you guys.
One of them was.
I will say.
One of them was that American dude who was assassinated. Who someone we used to know,
Malcolm X.
No. Similar in many respects, but someone you and I used to know fairly well. used to use as his avatar, and the other one was Doctor, in inverted commas, David Duke, who, of course, bought his doctorate from some East European show without doing it. But anyway.
Well, I mean, the thing is, with all jokes aside, I mean, since you're living in Australia, you'll probably have more trouble importing the book, that BAP book, than you would the My Struggle book.
Here's an ironic thing. I've had to order a number of the Enoch, the books by Enoch Powell that I've got. I've had to order from Australia because obviously they're base people that have kept their copies around in order to be able to sell them.
Yeah.
Oh, listen, if I want to get anything on the internet, I use a VPN, and then I can get what I like. Because, if you've got a decent VPN, you don't come from Australia or anywhere else. So,
Yeah. But that was it. Yeah, I mean, the very argument that the German state in sort of prior to World War II that shall not be named was this authoritarian state, and even almost for the Soviet Union at this point. Modern states are kind of making those states pale in comparison.
Over the last couple of years, yes, you're not wrong at all. Yeah, you're not wrong at all.
I don't know. I've read some of Gulag Archipelago, and I think
maybe the Soviet Union's a step too far.
I think it's definitely heading there, and I think some of the examples of what's happened in Australia, New Zealand, France, they're probably pushing the limits of that, and there are certain things that have happened even in the UK, like police officers telling people that no, you can't let your children play out in the front garden because there's a deadly disease that's going to kill everyone, and it's whatever the excuse you use for it. Sorry, if they're on my property,
dead?
Yeah. if they're on, this is the thing, like they will not even allow. They were willing to use that as a justification to say no, you cannot do even that on your own property.
But John, look, we've got a totally political police force now, and I think in UK and the same in Australia. In fact, probably even worse.
It's still not to the extent where you're going to be arrested by someone posing as any number of different things and marched off to a work camp. We aren't at that point yet. But what I would say,
we're getting there.
What I would say is that the individual probably had a greater degree of privacy, especially outside of the cities, in the 1930s. I would say I'm willing to say that, like, the average individual probably didn't have too much to fear from the state, unless they happened to be one of the groups that the state decided it didn't like.
Yeah. Don't disagree.
But we are now, under a total surveillance state. There's more video cameras in the UK than there are people, and you can't scratch your bum or pick your nose without 10 different cameras having seen you, unless of course they don't want the cameras to have seen you, and then they all malfunction or whatever.
Well, I mean, I was quite put out because I found out the offices, the cameras in my office at work have microphones on them.
Wow.
I tell you what's really bugged me recently. I worked in retail for a number of years, and one of the problems when they put these self-scan checkouts in was theft. It went through the roof because it's very easy to just say you're putting a load of carrots in your bag when you're putting like a bottle of whiskey or whatever. And what they've done now is, and I've seen this in a number of places, they've installed like screens, sort of like iPad-sized screens, on every single self-scan, so you can see yourself doing your shopping. And obviously the point of that is saying that we suspect you of stealing, even if you haven't stolen anything, and we want you to know that we are watching you. And it
Yeah.
infuriates me because the assumption is that I've done something wrong, even though I haven't. They treat you as if you're a criminal when you haven't done anything wrong. So I don't know how long it will last, but at the moment you can actually turn them. You can push them to one side, and I know there's other cameras in the shop. I work retail long enough to know they've got plenty of cameras about. But the idea that you are showing me to my face that we doubt you, and so we are going to make sure you know we're watching you. I find that repugnant. I think that's it's a deeply unsettling way of being in society. It assumes absolutely zero trust. We've
Yeah.
become a very low trust society.
I mean, I mostly stick to doing my shopping at like a proper greengrocers and a butcher's, and I actually took my nan into Sainsbury's about a week or two ago, and I was like at the end of it, like there's a bit where you go through the till, and you're kind of pushed through it. There's like these big screens either side that are all rattly and noisy, and I was like, why are you paying for this experience? Why are you putting yourself through this? This is disgusting.
Yeah.
It's like being treated like some sort of farm animal.
Well, yeah, but look,
Yeah.
this is going to become much bigger because the next thing they're going to want us to do is to have our children microchip, just like if you were a puppy or a kitten.
Well, hold on.
That's coming.
This is an important topic because in the UK, they have now written into law that for the first time ever, there is going to be a register of homeschooled children.
Yeah, I
So
saw that actually. Yeah.
my son is homeschooled, and he wasn't homeschooled initially. When you send your child to school and take them out, you have to send a letter to notify the council, and so they have your records when you do that. If you don't send them to school at all, they do not have a record. Well, now they want to change that, and the reason they're stating that they want to change that is because they want to be able to provide help and support to homeschooling families. The real reason is that they know they have a massive problem with extremism in certain communities who have a proclivity to not send their children to state schools. Would you like to guess what those communities are?
Muslim.
Yes. So the British
Wannabes.
the British people who had no say whether these quote unquote extremists came here are being punished, are being told that they can't homeschool their children without their children being on a register, which is the thin end of the wedge. Let's be very, very clear. There is a reason they want to do this. So the British people who had no say in whether these extremists came here are being put under undue, unnecessary state surveillance because the state has a problem with the people that the state brought here.
Yeah.
And it really irritates the hell out of me.
Ain't much of a surprise though, because it's the way things have been going for the last 50 years.
The UK is still actually fairly lenient where it comes to homeschooling. I think France, it's totally outlawed. You cannot homeschool.
Yeah, wouldn't surprise me in France, to be honest.
I think Australia is quite strict on homeschooling as well, from what I've read.
Australia, no, you can homeschool in Australia, but they don't particularly like it, but you can.
Well, no country likes it.
Yeah, but no, that's not true. It's in America, it's totally accepted.
The UK took a fairly lenient stance on it. The problem you had is that during lockdown, a lot of parents found that their children weren't getting they basically discovered what a quality education looks like and decided not to send their children back, which is essentially what we did.
The other thing you've got to look at, like my son went to a private school, which my wife, who was quite well off because of her dad, and myself could just about afford. I don't know that we could now. If my son was not in his 20s now, I don't think I could afford to send him to private school.
The problem a lot of homeschoolers have is that their take on education is very different to what the state's take on education is. So my wife was a teacher before we had our child, and so she will be able to jump through the hoops, whatever stipulations are said by the council in terms of oh, you have to be doing this type of education. We want to see this record, blah, blah, blah. She'll be able to do that fine. She's done it for a living. She did it for 10 years. She'll be fine. But most homeschoolers don't have that experience, and they don't provide structured lessons in the way that, you know, the state would mandate them. And they don't keep the same documentation. And so they will run in. A lot of people are going to run full foul of whatever it is they try and bring in via this homeschooling register, which, like I say, is just the thin end of the wedge.
It's a bad idea, of course it is, John. But like I think a lot of people misunderstand. Like the best way of doing homeschooling is not like individual parents
Part of the co-op.
schooling their children.
Mm-hmm.
It's a group of parents with various skills and various qualifications.
Yes.
Schooling a group of kids. That's the way to do it, because that way the children still get socialized, and also socialized in the best sense. I don't mean socialized in any sort of socialist sense.
Yes. So the way,
and also like they get lessons that are structured from people who know what they're talking about.
Well, so from my own personal example, my wife, she will teach him the kind of literacy, math, science lessons independently. But whenever he does anything, physical education, anything outside, basically, it will always be with other people. And I get that, other homeschoolers won't be in that position where they feel comfortable teaching the English, maths, literacy, etc. So absolutely, they should club together with other people, and my wife clubs together with other people for the social aspect. So my son, he goes to a swimming club, and he goes to various other clubs, and a lot of them are run by homeschooling parents, and it's a good way for them to make a bit of money on the side, and they deliver their speciality. So we've done rugby, tennis, all sorts of things. It's been great.
I would say, like in Australia, for example, the homeschool movement in Australia, which is actually quite big now, and has been growing because they want to jab all the little kids who are at no risk from the China virus whatsoever, and this virus, this experimental vaccine, it has been proven constantly settles in the ovaries of young girls. And like, for anyone who doesn't know, a girl is born with all the eggs she'll ever have.
Yes.
She doesn't get any more as she gets older. So if you've got a daughter and you jab her because of this China virus, which she is of no risk at all, really, as a young person, and it also settles in everyone's bone marrow, neither of which the scientists thought would happen, but that's what does happen.
Well, interestingly, you mentioned that my grandparents, obviously they're older, and they could have had this happen because they're older, right? But within months of having their jab and their double jab and then their booster jab, one of them developed shingles that did not go away for about 3 months.
Yep,
and the other
that's one that's been around for a while, John. That one's
still got them now. Still got little bits sticking around. The other one got leukemia.
Yep.
And again, they're old, right? So the leukemia could have been, it could have been something that's been building up for a while, but it feels like there's more to it than just, oh, they're old.
We've got to be very careful of what we say about this because we're on YouTube. But I will just say that, the vaccines that young people basically don't need because they're at no risk from this virus. It gives especially young men and boys a very high chance of getting heart problems, which they would not otherwise get. And I'm not saying that all of these athletes that have been drop down dead with heart attacks recently has anything to do with that. It's probably not. It's probably just pure coincidence, Susan, if you're watching. But it does do that, and it also does sell in girls' and women's ovaries. And I've got to say, like, if I had a child, I wouldn't give them this experimental jab unless it was over my dead body. And I've not taken it, and I will not take it. And but like I said, in Minecraft, because, Susan, we're not allowed to even speak the truth anymore. We have to just lie.
I mean, the thing that got me on it was when this Omicron stuff happened, and they said, "Oh, the vaccines are less effective against this one. You need to get another vaccine." And so
do you remember when they were 100% safe and effective?
yeah, but so they say you need to get another vaccine, but it's the problem is that the recipe is exactly the same. They tell you it's like the vaccine's unchanged from the previous 2 times we gave it to you, which is kind of like, because even the flu vaccines, they change every season depending on what they've seen over the past year. So
yes. Yeah, that's correct. The flu vaccine that's administered in England is usually based on the strain of flu that they see in Australia, for example, because obviously Australia has their winter 6 months before we have ours.
A virus. So of course they inject you with a spike protein, and viruses have lots of spike proteins. And the funny thing about a spike protein is that, like, a virus adapts very easily because its RNA strain is very small, but the spike protein is the easiest thing to change. So that's the thing that's going to change the most. But they're giving you the same original spike protein from the old COVID vaccine. It makes no sense. It's not...
Well, I'll tell you what makes sense to me is that the vaccine manufacturers made an awful lot of vaccines and they have a shelf life.
Yeah, and they want to make that money as well.
Make that dollar.
Yeah. Another thing is, which I'm increasingly starting to think, is that because they want you to get it over and over again, put it this way, it might not have been so successful the first time. Let's put it that way. That's a personal hypothesis of mine.
I just think it's all crap, is my own opinion. We honestly, kids are at no risk of this at all. So it used to be, it used to be that adults and older people would go to great lengths to save children. These days, we seem to be sacrificing children to save people who are almost dead anyway.
I will jump in here and cover the flip side. So when it comes to the flu, the flu vaccine that we administer, or the flu shot that we administer, is typically given to children and people of sort of grandparent age. And the reason they do that is not because the children particularly suffer from flu. It's because the children are most likely to spend time around grandma and granddad, and it helps protect grandma and granddad because the children are less likely to catch it.
I've never had a flu shot in my life, ever.
Well, children don't actually get a shot. They get nasal spray, I think it is these days in the UK.
Yeah. But the point is, what I'm trying to say, John, is yeah, I get that you don't want your granddad and your grandma to die. But, if you look at did you watch the thing that came out, I don't know, was it 4 weeks ago? The 1,700, I think it was 1,750 people in it. Something like 17,500 people have died in the UK over the whole of the last 2 years, totally only alone from the China virus, which is basically nothing. It's nothing.
I have I have a problem with a lot of people quoting these statistics, and I think I've talked about it here on the past, is that a statistic can be manipulated to present
Never.
essentially anything you want it to present, and the government have been engaged in this, and we know they have.
Yeah.
And
Yep.
the problem is the polar opposite argument have also been engaged in this, and there's been a lot of misunderstanding of statistics. I'm not saying that particular statistic has been misunderstood, but what you have to bear in mind is that a comorbidity can include things that are very, very, very benign. And so to
like
say
being
that
vastly overweight, for example,
like having things that are routinely treatable with medication, like
okay, I take
so
your point.
This
So
is
I
like
think-
how many death certificates do you see with alcoholism written on them?
Yeah,
I mean, like practically none, because it's always it's invariably something else that's got them. But the doctors will correctly surmise that
hang
alcohol or
on.
alcoholism played a huge part.
Okay, fair enough. But 2 points. First of all, all of the doctors and hospitals have been encouraged to make everyone a COVID death who they possibly could. All right. So in New Zealand, for example, you have a gangster who is shot to death by gangster rivals. And because he had COVID, when they did his post-mortem, they said, okay, he's a COVID death. All right. And that happens in every single country.
well they will list it on the death.
Wait, hang on, let me finish. That he's put down as a COVID death. So he goes in. Let me finish, please. And then I'll let you say whatever you like. But he is put down as a COVID death, and he goes into the statistics. And also, on the other hand, right, the American CDC very recently admitted, and this is what they actually said. They said over, and let me emphasize that, over 75% of the people who have died with COVID, and let me say again, with COVID, had at least, and let me say that again, at least 4 comorbidities. Not 1, not 2, not 3, at least 4. Sorry.
Fat, smoker, drinking, bad lungs. I don't know.
Me, I'm a smoker, and I'm a smoker.
No, I'm just saying that would be what the
hang
four were.
on. I'm a smoker and a drinker, and I've never had the jab, and I've never had COVID. So
Well, I mean that.
Or if I did, I didn't know this, which is
Yeah.
quite likely.
So they will list an awful lot of things on a death certificate, and you're absolutely right, that will include COVID. And this is what I was saying. Part of the problem with the statistics is that they're very opaque, in the sense that absolutely what you say is correct, that anyone who dies who is suspected of having COVID, or who has COVID, or is diagnosed as having COVID has included on their death certificate COVID as a cause of death. Whether that's a part of that, whether it was a significant contributing factor, whether it was not a factor at all, it just happened to be that they had it at the time they died. And as I say, that is part of the problem with the government statistics, is that they're very black and white. They don't allow for any grey areas. Either you died with COVID and therefore you counted as having died with COVID, or you didn't die with COVID and therefore you're not counted as having died with COVID. And the flip side of that is exactly what you're saying, which is where you get to the other end of the spectrum, where people are saying, well, these people are the only people that had COVID and nothing else when they died, so therefore they are the only people that have died of COVID. And it's like, well, no, the reality is probably somewhere in between. And there's a problem with both camps.
It's probably on the lower side, though, John. To be fair.
But it is why, sort of about a year into it of going through all these statistics and going into bat for the kind of COVID skeptic statistics, which are sometimes very on dodgy ground, and often more observably so than some of the government statistics. It's why moved away from trying to battle it out on statistics, because the government will be able to just put out whatever it wants and it will look more compelling to the average person than the statistics from the skeptics.
Well, the average stupid person, for sure.
Well, the average person, full stop, because the average person is stupid. But and move instead simply to the, I believe that a person has freedom to choose what goes in their body. I do not care whatever anyone else says. That is a fundamental right of a human being. I don't care what statistic you throw at me. I do not care. A person has an individual right to put what they choose in their body. They do not have to accept a vaccination, and that's. I think that's the rational position to argue this on.
I totally agree with that, and I also totally agree that parents should be able to control what goes into their children's bodies.
Correct. I don't believe children can grant consent. I'm not a paedophile.
Absolutely right. So the idea that 5 to 11-year-olds, which is what they're trying to do now.
Oh, I think it's abhorrent.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. But I would also say it's strange that the feminist movement, which is like totally my body, my choice, is not about the China virus.
Well, the feminist movement has, the my body, my choice thing has never been about that person's body. It's always been about their ability to control what happens with someone else's body, that someone else being the child.
Totally agree. I just wanted to point it out. It's not that I thought you would disagree. I just wanted to point out the hypocrisy of that.
Well,
all right, guys.
We've seen I don't know if you wanted to talk about these Canadian trucker convoys of peace.
Well, actually, yes, I do a little bit. And so let's talk about not only the Canadian ones, but there's one in Australia. There's also one in UK too. So yeah, go for it, mate.
What one in the UK? What, like Romanian?
There's one going from Edinburgh down to.
Yeah, no, it's and Based Welshman, who is a good channel that I follow a lot, and he's got a great little dog. Yeah, he's been covering the UK one.
Oh right, I didn't. I mean, to be honest, I kind of assumed that you couldn't have protests like that in Europe because of the way our transport infrastructure and industry works.
No, you know Based Welshman, I'm sure.
Yeah, I know. I just hadn't heard of it. I hadn't.
Yeah, no, he's been covering the UK one. There has been one in Australia too. There's only one Based Welshman manga in the chat, but he's the guy with the great little dog.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is that I've been really, really shitting on Canadians for like 2-3 years now as being the worst end of the Anglosphere, and I kind of feel I've got to take that back just a little bit now. But the thing is, I mean, a lot of people on the right have been putting a lot of energy into this. I hope it's something cool, but I also kind of think that it's not. It's just, it's a bit of pushback. There's going to be a lot of leftism in there, a lot of liberalism.
I'm not sure there is. In terms of the Canadian one, anyway, it's mostly like guys who own their own trucks. And the problem in Australia and UK is that far less people own their own trucks than they do in North America. But in Canada, these are guys who own their own trucks. And like, there's been some great memes done. For example, you, Armin, and the rest of the guys on the stream and in the chat will remember the European, in inverted commas, trucks of peace in places like Nice in France, where these enormous great trucks driven by Muslims ran over loads of women and children and like basically put them in bits. And you have scumbags like Trudeau in Canada and other people trying to pretend that the Canadian trucker movement are terrorists when all they do is sound horns occasionally. They don't run over women and children.
Did you see that GoFundMe have cancelled their?
Yeah, I did. I did see that.
Did you see they have changed their refund policy for this particular fund?
Why? What? They're trying not to give them their money back.
So I think no, quite the opposite. I think in the past, what's happened is that if they cancel a fund, you can request your money back, or the money will be donated to an alternative charity. And what they've done, or what people were saying to do, is to request a chargeback with your bank, because that there'll be a financial cost to GoFundMe. And so I saw this doing the rounds all day today, and lo and behold, by the end of the day, GoFundMe announced that they're changing their policy and they will refund everyone, i.e., without you having to ask for the money back. Because the implication being that they're being financially impacted by people charging back.
People have got to stop using GoFundMe and use other things.
Well, here's the thing. So people have been saying that people should use. I can't think of the name of it now. There's an alternative sort of platform to GoFundMe.
Yeah, there is. There's two at least.
Today, that alternative company have announced that they are under a sustained DDoS attack. I wonder what that's from.
I'm just amazed, that these like working class Canadian guys are like
no, Duke. They're petty bourgeoisie.
They're just racist, Duke.
A bloke who owns his own truck is a working class guy to me, but whatever. But I know you, Adam, have known far more about trucking than I do, because that has been your business for a long time. But let me just say, these dudes, they're not running over women and children. They occasionally sound their horns. And most average Canadians seem to be supporting them. And that fucking wank Trudeau actually ran away when they turned up in the Canadian capital.
Brave Sir Trudeau ran away, bravely ran away. I do wonder if he has maybe done a Hillary Clinton. When she announced that Trump supporters were a small basket of deplorables. And
I do hope so.
That one comment kind of cost her the election, or was part of what cost her the election, I'm sure. I
bloody well hope so, John. I really do.
But the problem is that haven't they just had an election and the Canadians returned Trudeau? So I mean,
yeah, but you've got to
you get what you deserve, right?
No, you've got to remember, John, that Canada is like every other country in the world. And it is in regions. And sadly for Canada, like Ottawa and that province in the east of Canada has most of the population. But if you go to the prairie states of Canada and what would be the Midwest if you were looking at America, those guys loads of them are very based still.
But the cities make the majority of the population, though.
Yeah, but exactly. That's what I was just trying to say, Alan. It's like, Ottawa has got, I don't know, coming up to a quarter of the population of Canada.
I would also point out that of all Anglo countries, apart from the United States, the demographics of Canada is the worst.
Yep.
And that partly explains for its incredible voting behavior, but not entirely.
Well, it's also the Canadian Conservatives, who I think changed their name to the Progressive Conservatives, are absolutely shit. I mean,
talking of parties changing names, I don't know how you guys feel about this. The Christian, is it the CDU in Germany, are considering dropping the Christian part of their party name to
the Christian Democrats in Germany
to try and appeal to a wider audience.
Yes, Mama Merkel has let in a whole bunch of Muslims, and now the Christian doesn't sound so good.
Maybe they should go for the Abrahamic Democratic.
Merkel started off as a East German secret police woman. So, why are we surprised?
Do you reckon she ever pulled people's fingernails out?
No, I don't think she did. I think she was just someone who listened in cafes and bars and reported people.
Oh, so she is literally the scum of the earth.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah, great. Doesn't surprise me.
That's how she started off doing her job. And
Yeah.
that's why you saw her on the famous video,
She does remind me a lot of Rosa Klebb, to be honest.
I will just say that my grandfather saved people from people like her, and not in Minecraft, ended the life of more than a few people like Merkel, by the sounds of it.
Good, but I mean, Merkel, you've seen that famous stream where like a couple of colleagues picked up German flags and she took them off them. Imagine you're a man and you're standing there waving a German flag, and this fat, very, very ugly woman takes it off you, and you let her do that. My God. Like if a woman had done that to me, I'd have slapped her.
As audio descriptions go, this is pretty good.
But it's seriously what she did.
Yeah, I know. But maybe that should be on there for the visually impaired when that clip goes on the BBC.
That German woman steals flags from cucked males.
Yeah, she just took them off them, and these guys stood there like they were like 5-year-old little boys, and let her do it. It's God, man.
Well, honestly, the state of man, and I mean man as in the masculine, in the West is it's very declined, isn't it? It's miserable.
All right, all right, guys. We're on an hour and a half, so I'm going to pull us on to a couple of things I want to talk about. And the first thing is, do we want Boris Johnson to go? Is it a good thing, or should maybe us on the right not be in favour of that? Go for it.
I think we shouldn't care one way or the other.
I think at this point we need a Labour victory to actually slap.
So Atterman's stepping over. Aussie's accelerationist. So up until today, I was all for backing Boris on the basis that he is now under the thumb of the backbenchers, and he is now reliant on them for his continued existence. But having just seen the people he's appointed to his like most senior sort of aide positions, he's supposed to have cleared out the kind of woke stuff, and and then he goes and brings like Guto Hari, and I'm kind of like, nah, he's not learned his lesson. He needs to go. I don't know what to replace him with, but he just doesn't seem to have learned.
I mean, something that infuriates me about Boris Johnson in general is that, like, only once he was in trouble did Operation
Big
double
Dog
quotes
red meat
close quotes happen. That's just, to me, that just shows you that, like, the disposition of the Tory party. They know that their base are like do not like what's happening, and they are only reluctantly willing in certain scenarios in which they are under tension to actually give the public what they want. That, to me, is what's set me dead against Boris.
Well,
but even then,
hold on.
Okay, go on.
No, you say.
I was just going to say, but even then, they don't really give you any victories. It's like token gestures at best.
Yeah, it's and like even the most important things, which is like his closed borders and stopping the ridiculousness and get drag queen story out and things like that. Like then those are never going to happen. Getting rid of that is just not happening ever. It's like things like
it doesn't look like it. I grant you, George.
Yeah, it's like we may or may not privatize the BBC in 10 years' time.
Well, so the government could very easily get rid of Drag Queen Story Hour. I mean, it's been cutting Stonewall out of some of its organisations, which I think is a positive step. But I mean, on the subject of Drag Queen Story Hour, people have been taking their children to go see Widow Twanky in theatre
hang on,
performances.
that's not the same, John. I'm sorry.
No. What's not? Both of them are transvestites.
No, it's in no way the same. I'm sorry, it's not.
I'm
listen,
sorry.
I'm not saying I'd take my child to it, but you know, if people are willing to take their child to go watch a pantomime,
That was a piss take, John. Look, listen, Widow Twanky and all that stuff was a piss take that made people laugh because it was so ridiculous.
Well, maybe people laugh at the transgender story hour. They think it's ridiculous.
But they don't. No, but they don't. That's
the funny thing about Drag Queen Story Hour is that a lot of the time the parents don't know it's happening.
Yeah.
Well, again, I agree. I don't think it should happen without parental consent. But equally, a lot of the time, the parents are there and they're laughing along and joining in. So, you know, it's
it ain't
as long as
look. No, John, I'm sorry, but it's not Widow Twanky. That is bollocks.
You are sounding like such a libertarian right now.
Yeah, you really are.
I'm being the.
You should stop. You should stop because you don't really believe this. I don't think you believe this at all, John. Really. Widow Twanky was a joke. All right, it was a joke.
Well, I think these transgenders are a joke. But...
Well, so do I. But the people who go there don't. But the people who go to that shit don't.
I don't know. I kind of think all of that stuff should be stopped personally.
Yeah, no, listen. I never really liked Widow Twanky, to be honest with you. But it was a piss take and a joke. It was like, how can somebody this ugly be a woman? You know?
Call it with the
I mean, again, I don't see any difference.
Man, listen, but they weren't evil demons, if you understand. And also in the traditional pantomimes, these female characters who were played by really ugly males always lost in the end. They always did. In the end, they lost, and the princess won.
And they're also they're not teaching you really weird stuff because
listen. All I'm saying is, and hear me out, is that it isn't the Tory party that's putting on Drag Queen Story Hour. It is private individuals engaging in things with other private individuals, and that's
you're such a libertarian.
Well, yes, relatively speaking. And look,
John, are you seriously telling me that the Conservative Party and the British government at the moment, which is the so-called in inverted commas Conservative Party, is not giving money to LGBTQ crap?
Like I say, they're working to cut Stonewall out of various parts of their organisation, and I think that's a positive because I think Stonewall is driving an awful lot of this stuff. I don't think.
Wasn't the Equalities Commission created by the Tory Party?
I think probably they've created an awful lot of rubbish, to be quite frank. I'm not sure. I'd have to see some data on it. I'm sure there are funds being directed towards LGBTQ organisations. I'm sure there are, and I don't support it because I don't support funds being directed to any organisation.
Yeah. Listen, I know John doesn't support that stuff, but look, a man going in the chat saying Classic FM had an LGBTQ night this evening. I don't know if that's true, but if they did,
yeah, how would that even work? Is that gay composers, gay performers, or something?
Well, it's just songs that sound gay, mate. Beethoven is now a black lesbian. So.
I mean, I did kind of consider starting an Ataman radio, just where we just go through the history of British classical music.
Go for
Maybe
it.
I'll have to actually start that off.
You should. That would be a good idea for a channel, actually. But yeah, good. But look, guys. Let me move this on a little bit.
I'm being asked to ask you, Duke. Do you know? Hang on. Have you seen trans suicide rates?
No, but I hope they're high. Sorry, I don't mean that.
Oh, that's a bit.
I don't mean that. I don't. In Minecraft, we should all live and live together. But yeah,
I'll give you a clue, Duke. We're halfway there.
Yeah, right. No. Let me change this slightly. No, honestly, I don't want anyone to die. I think we should all live together. But perhaps if they didn't become trans in the first place, they wouldn't commit suicide. But look, listen, mental health is an important thing. But we're not allowed to say that people who want to become the other sex are mentally ill, which they are, to be honest. But having said that, do we want Alexander Johnson to go? Or if he goes, will we get someone worse?
That's I suppose quite a worry. I don't think either way. I don't think it really matters.
If you want Sunak, then the answer's yes. If you don't want Sunak, then the answer's no.
Will they put him in though? I mean,
I think he's definitely being
they do seem
astroturfed. He's being astroturfed into the position. Look at all the papers.
Guys, look, let's be truthful here. If you are a British Prime Minister with an 80-seat majority and you get unseated in the middle of a parliament without losing an election, the only people who can replace you are either the Treasurer, the Chancellor of the Exchequer. Hang on, let me finish. Chancellor of the Exchequer, Home Secretary, or Foreign Secretary. No one else has any chance whatever of replacing Johnson unless he loses a general election.
Okay, you're talking about what's possible in reality versus what's possible in principle. Because
yeah.
There is a convention in the Conservative Party that the PM comes from one of those offices of state or has held one of those offices of state in the past, but there's nothing that says they have to. But you're right. You are right. In the middle of a term, it's highly likely to be one of those four office holders. And I'm not a fan of any of them at the moment.
So look, our choices are Rishi Sunak, Indian, Priti Patel, Indian, or Liz Truss, who is she's closer to a Lib Dem than a Tory, and also a totally anti-Brexit, and also very inexperienced. So I'm sorry, but whilst I don't trust or like Alexander Johnson in the least degree, I'd sooner have him, the devil I know, than those three. And in addition, if you get an Indian like Rishi Sunak or Priti Patel running Britain, I would say that's an absolute sign of defeat and conquest.
Yeah, I was talking to you about this last night, and I feel the same way, to be quite honest. Yeah.
If they put Sunak in, they'll definitely lose at the next election.
Yeah, but Priti Patel, same. Because not only will all of the red wall, in inverted commas, Labour seats just totally reject that, so will much of the home counties.
Well, I mean, the red wall doesn't really exist, but yeah, you're right. Britain's not going to vote for a South Asian,
an Indian leader. What do you think the chances are of India voting for an English leader today?
Well, even less.
Very low, yeah, even less.
To be fair, there are more Indians in England than there are English in India, so they've got a better chance.
There are. I can't deny that. But honestly, look, I'd call me a racist if you want, because I am. Yeah, no, I just am. I am.
I would like to
I don't
apologise
want.
to myself for previous remarks.
No, man. Listen. I'm an Anglo Celt, and I want an Anglo Celt to run Britain.
Yeah, again, we talked about this last night, Anjuk, and I said, they're British subjects. They're subjects of the Queen through dint of the Empire. I get that. I can accept that they may have come here and they may profess to want to integrate and so on and so on. I may not particularly like that, but then, like you say, there is it just feels like a step too far to then have them as your PM.
It's a conquest, and you're under them, boys.
Yeah.
So for me, listen, if Alexander Johnson loses a general election and any MP can go against him, which in that case they can, fine. But like replacing him now, I think most of the people who want to replace Johnson at the moment are pro pulling back into the China virus nonsense.
Yes.
And everything else. And so at the moment, although I don't like and I don't trust Alexander Johnson in the least degree, he's the lesser of two evils. And in the Royal Navy, you always go for the lesser of two evils.
Unless you're missing your protein.
Yeah, they got salt pork and salt beef, and they had their protein that way. But and also they got limes, which is how we are called limeys.
Limeys, yes.
Indeed. Yeah, exactly.
Yes,
but that for the vitamin C. But yeah, I just think that like Johnson with his balls in a vice is actually much better than one of these other wankers.
Well, this is what I thought, but then his appointments today send the message that, to me, he doesn't really feel like they may indeed be in a vice, but it doesn't feel like he's acting upon that. Like, I would have expected to see some more kind of Brexit skeptic, and maybe they refuse to take posts. Maybe they're staying away. They don't want to be tainted by Johnson. They're thinking of their political future, perhaps.
Well, listen, all I keep hearing, John, is more and more Conservative MPs voting against Johnson. But like, how many of them are actually Conservative? I mean, we've spoken about this many times in the past. I don't think there are more than 50 really Conservative MPs in the Conservative parliamentary body.
No, I think you're right, and I think at the moment they have the most power they've had in quite some time. But it doesn't. I thought it was translating to something worthwhile in the removal of various restrictions and so on. But then, like I say, today, when it comes to him reappointing his new sort of senior aides, having allegedly cleared out the problem children, the people that weren't holding his feet to the fire and so on, he's just brought in a load of anti-Brexit, pro-BLM. He obviously doesn't feel that his feet are, like his revealed preference is to ignore the fact that his feet are being held to the fire. So
I would love to know, John, how much somebody like Alexander Johnson watches anything except the MSM. Because if he just watches the MSM, like he can't have a single clue how real people think.
Well, I mean, it's kind of like when you get like a lot of people. Peter Hitchens rails against like public opinion surveys.
Yeah.
But public opinion surveys will tell you quite a lot, even if you often have to read between the lines.
True, but like Peter Hitchens recently was on a stream where he pointed out that most of the people who want to get rid of Johnson over in inverted commas, Partygate are anti loosening the China virus
Yes.
nonsense,
Mm.
and also they're mostly anti-Brexit as well.
Partygate is being used as a means to an end. No one cared when the Times reported that Boris Johnson had a birthday bash like a year ago. No one cared.
No.
Yeah,
But
I mean, like, who does?
it's being used today as the drip of Boris Johnson's unfit to be leader.
Yeah,
I
and
mean,
the thing is as well with this whole hysteria around, like, that Labour have tried to turn this into a win for them, and their attempts just seem to come off as kind of callous and disgusting. There was a tweet they put up where they were describing some I don't know if it was a nurse or if it was a care worker in an old people's home, and they were saying, "Oh, I had to tell this guy on the phone
Yes, I
that he
remember
had to
that.
stay outside." And so his mum or his wife or whatever it
It was his
could
wife,
die
I
by,
think.
yeah, his wife could die alone. And it's like, oh, how much this nurse sacrificed, and I'm like, that's fucking disgusting. That's really really quite bad that they saw that as a win. And
Well,
yeah,
Adam, in Australia, they've recently been saying that parents with children who die of COVID, not that many children do, but they've been recently saying that parents who are not vaccinated, whose children are dying of COVID, won't be allowed to be with them when they die.
yeah,
It's just absolute bollocks.
Of course,
It's
yeah.
not a very dangerous fucking disease for most people who don't have loads of other things wrong with them or are very, very old.
Yeah. Well, the problem the state has with when it does this is, assuming it's not doing it for malicious ends, and I do have
You
some.
can't assume.
I do have some doubts about whether it's being done maliciously or sorry, whether the vaccine and the lockdowns and all, whether they're being done maliciously or for the benefit of people. If you just take it on its face that they think they're doing their best, let's put maliciousness to the side. They think they're doing their best. How on earth do they think alienating citizens by imposing things like that is going to win people over to their point of view? What people only need to look at history. When Britain implemented a smallpox vaccine mandate for children at birth, they had to go and be presented for a smallpox vaccine within, I think it was something like 21 days. If they didn't, the parents were fined. I think it was a decade after they'd implemented this law, something in the region of 20 to 30% of children still weren't being vaccinated because people just see stuff like that as a red flag, and they will not cooperate. They will not cooperate. You catch more flies with honey than you do with vinegar. And that's assuming they're acting in what they think is everyone's best interest. I don't think they are.
Yeah, no, I pretty much agree with that, to be honest, John. I don't disagree with that at all. Johnson accused Starmer of covering for Savile. Well, he did. Wasn't he the top
head of the
CPS?
Yeah,
he was the Crown Prosecution Service head, and he did cover Savile. So
and they're calling it a slur, and they're saying that
but it ain't a slur. It was true.
It's a far right slur.
Yeah. I mean, it's kind of funny because, it's retarded. But some of the rearguard action you've seen over this is like these shit lips coming out of the woodwork to go, oh, it wasn't his case. It's like that's not really how director of the CPS works as a position.
No, he's in charge, and one of the most important and biggest cases would have gone straight to him.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I mean, maybe he didn't see it, but then that just means he probably wasn't running his department.
Well, this is that's what I was going to say. There is a very modern malady which is in relation to the responsibility and accountability conundrum. He may not have been responsible for that particular case, but as head of the Crown Prosecution Service, he is accountable for the actions of the Crown Prosecution Service.
But he would have seen, John. He would have seen it.
Well,
Like that.
yeah.
That's like a really famous person. That would
Yeah,
have
you'd
looked straight
expect
to
news
him.
of that would go around
Yeah,
the office
yeah.
somewhat.
No, but
Yeah.
but again, that sorry, that's not what I'm saying. Maybe I haven't been clear. That there is in the modern world a desire to avoid responsibility and accountability,
yeah,
and everyone is very keen to pass the buck. And what I'm trying to say is that he may not have been overseeing directly that case. He may not have.
But he would have
let me
known
finish.
about it.
Let me finish. Yeah, well, this is what I'm saying. He may not have been responsible individually for that particular case. There will be thousands that the Crown Prosecution Service, I'm sure, is looking at any given time. But as the head of the Crown Prosecution Service, he has to accept accountability. He is the head of the Crown Prosecution Service. And like you say, it's a high-profile case. There is no way he wouldn't have heard about it. So even if he wasn't directly responsible for that case, he has to accept accountability.
Yeah, absolutely.
And of course,
as you said, he would have heard about it.
And of course, as Draco's actual point is, Johnson will bring up that, but he wouldn't bring up rape gangs.
Grooming gangs, yeah.
Yeah.
I was thinking the same thing.
Yep, I absolutely agree. Because, Jimmy Savile, wank, vile scum that he was, didn't...
White man.
Yeah,
but he didn't he didn't rape and torture and humiliate not like maybe 50 girls, but like thousands upon thousands, which is what the Islamic so-called grooming gangs did, which are actually Pakistani child rapists,
which is still operating.
Which are still going
it is
today.
still
going today. Still going today.
Did you see Lord Ahmed of Rotherham got, I think, 5 years in prison for buggery of a child and attempted rape of a female and a male child.
Wow, what a surprise!
Mate of Tony Blair, of course. Parachuted into his lordship. He'd been basically a local councillor up until that point.
How many real conservatives, John, have been parachuted into their position by Johnson since he came into power?
I don't know.
Any at all?
Well, I'm sure some have, yeah.
I doubt very many.
Well, the problem with the House of Lords ceasing to be hereditary, or largely hereditary, because they still have some hereditary peers, but not many, is that you create a vested interest for stuffing the House of Lords with your cronies. So what happens every time a new government comes in is they seek to stuff the House of Lords.
All right, but what I'm trying to say here, John, is that totally agree with you, and that vile filth traitor Tony Blair, who I would love to see hanged, certainly did stuff the House of Lords, but I don't think Johnson has.
I'd have to look into it. There will have been appointments, and I'm sure.
But probably a quarter as many, maybe.
Well, the problem is the people that Boris would stuff the House of Lords with are probably not too dissimilar from the people that Tony Blair would stuff it with.
Yeah, just more Blairites.
Well, yeah, okay, I get your point there, but what I'm trying to say is this is why we keep going left, because when the Tories get in, they don't reverse anything the Labour Party did. And Johnson has done nothing to reverse anything that Labour Party did, particularly in really important changes in the British Constitution. So, for example, the British High Court is a nonsense.
Well, because they're just a continuation of it.
Yeah, they're just con artists, is what I'm trying to say.
Mm. So what are we going to do about it?
Problem is
Well,
democracy.
yeah, well, none of us have any power,
Yeah.
of course, which we have to always admit. But like, at least let us say what the truth is, for God's sake.
I mean, yeah, that's probably one of the bigger ones. Is the right needs to actually agree that it's not in power, and probably needs to stop taking, these little paltry victories that never end up actually being real victories.
I'm
Adam, and I think we have to exploit everything we can get. Well, I do agree with you. We're not in power, but I think every little tiny who the bloody hell's making all that noise?
Oh, sorry. Could that be heard? I didn't realise I was making any noise. I was yawning.
Okay. Yeah. All I was saying, Adam, is that, like, yeah, we have to admit we're not in power. We have no power. But on the other hand, I think we have to turn around and say that we have to say when these people are lying, which they often are. And like I'm no Alexander Johnson fan. I don't like him. I don't trust him. I think he's a cuck who's run by that very, very average-looking thought that he's with. Who
we know.
I wouldn't have given it a second glance, but he did.
To be fair, she looks better than his wife did. So.
Well, I don't know. I never saw his wife, but like honestly, that slut, I wouldn't have even looked at her twice. But having said all that, we have to point out these lies.
Right, but the thing, like I always used to say that like January 6th was based, right? And obviously, when I was saying that, what I was referring to was that it was like it was a show of force. It was a show of numbers. You're showing potential people who could step forward, what they could enjoy, what they could get.
Long time in prison.
I think it was. Yeah, I don't think it was based at all. There's a quote.
The only thing I've seen is it's a long time in prison, and people like Don the pleb, who I like a lot, have said it was a complete fuck up.
So one of the nobles at the time of the Cromwellian, campaign against Charles I, he basically said to Cromwell, "Look, like, we have to be sure of what we're doing, because we can beat the king 99 times, but if he beats us once, we're done." And it's the same with the January 6th thing. Like, you can fight the state and beat it 99 times, but if it beats you once, at the end of that, you're done. And that's what happened to the January the 6th people. They had a chance to win. They didn't really understand the position they were in.
Did they ever really have a chance to win? I'm not sure about that.
Well, what happens if you take the capital and you say, right, we're forming a government? The ruling elites have fled. We're now in charge. What happens after that?
Did you see how many troops were in Washington when they did that?
Well, are the troops going to fire on American citizens, or are they going to side with the Americans?
Some of the American troops might.
No.
The closer you get to the frontline infantry guys, then less and less. But
you mean the guys that actually are going to shoot?
Yeah, those guys probably won't, to be honest. And I think governments in the West who are relying on that are making a huge error. But the support guys, the rear echelon motherfuckers, as the Americans say, those
the desk jockeys.
Yeah, those might.
Well, this is the thing, though. What was the point in January the 6th? What was the point in invading the capital if you're not going to form a government? That's exactly what That's exactly what rebels and rioters would have done in the past in that
But
position.
wasn't that like Trump like doing stuff and then not doing stuff as he so often did when he was president?
Listen, it would have only taken one person there to say, right, I'm in charge now.
Nah. I don't agree with that.
No,
Look,
actually, it would have been very simple for Donald Trump to have declared a state of emergency.
yeah, he might have done that, but no one else could have.
Well, like I say again, what was the point in any of them being there then? If they weren't willing to go to that length. Listen, the way I frame this is, if you believed that the election was stolen, if you believed it was stolen by these people,
which it was.
Let's just say ifs for now. If you believe it was stolen by these people to the point where you are willing to go and break into, trespass on the Capitol.
They didn't break in, they were let in by cops.
Okay. But again, it doesn't matter because, like I said, if you win 99 times, but the state wins the final battle, you lose. So why go to all those lengths when you know if you don't take it to the nth degree, you lose? And they lost because they weren't willing to go to the nth degree.
None of those people.
Right, but the argument I was making was more that, that huge crowd, the flag waving, the lengths that they were willing to go to, is there's someone watching somewhere on a big TV who thinks, yeah, I can lead those guys. Probably not Ron DeSantis. It will probably be someone further down the road. Ron DeSantis will probably be another cog on the way.
The likelihood of that being allowed to happen again in our lifetimes is minimal.
Hang on.
Yeah, I'm with John.
But it's happening in Canada now.
Yeah, all right. Hang on, guys. Just like on January 6th, the only person who got killed on January 6th
Ashley Babbitt.
Yeah, unarmed American woman who had served for years in the American Air Force, totally unarmed, shot by a black American cop when she was of no risk to him whatsoever. And the black American cop is a hero, never going to court, and her death is just completely...
Yeah, imagine that. The illegitimate state that stole the election, the tools of the illegitimate state shot and killed one of your people, and instead of declaring them traitors, you just all go home and wait for the police to come and round you up like idiots.
Well, who was supposed to be... No, John, who was supposed to be in charge of that if it wasn't Trump?
Like I say, it doesn't matter. What matters is...
I'm sorry. Who was supposed to be in charge of that if it was not Trump?
I'm sorry, but if you are willing to go to that length and then you back down, you get what you deserve. And it will be the same with the Canadian truckers. Justin Trudeau has fled the capital. One of the Canadian truckers, the organizer, whatever, should stand up and say, right, the government has left, we are forming a government. That's what they did when they got rid of the English.
I'd love what they didn't, but
the Americans.
In Canada, they didn't, but yeah.
Americans there.
Yeah, I beg your pardon. But all right, they should, but I don't think it's going to happen.
No, it's not going to happen, but that's the problem, isn't it? Every time you go into battle and you lose it, that's it. You've lost. If you don't, and Cromwell knew this, and the lords that went against Charles I knew this and understood this. If they did not take it to the nth degree, they lose. It's their heads that get chopped off.
All right. Franz has said in the chat, Baked Alaska was the rightful heir to Trump.
Yes.
He's half baked Alaska at best. So there you go. I don't think.
What? What does that mean?
He's not even half a person. But anyway, you don't know what half baked means. I can't believe that, George. For fuck's sake.
I mean, I'm just like, I don't know anything about the guy, but like, I don't know. It's very. It's
Well, I do know quite a lot about him. He once did this really cringy video outside a truck that belonged to traffic wardens saying how he loved their cops.
Oof.
That's all
like
you need to know.
my traditional understanding of half baked is that it's like, it's a not well thought enough idea or something. It's not well thought through.
That's half baked, Alaska. Yes, that you're right.
So
Half baked is entirely correct. Trust me. But yeah, I wouldn't have trust Donald Trump. I remember AA, although he would probably not want you to
Alien
believe.
man.
No, AA,
Mental.
the AA, the half Iranian guy who I do quite like, and I still absolutely. I'm not going to turn my volume up, Marco Calais spaghetti. But I do quite like, and he's quite entertaining. So I remember him being a total Trump's going to cross the Rubicon supporter. And if you want to know about that, you've got to look at Caesar crossing the Rubicon. And I never thought he would, but AA did for some strange reason. But there we go.
AA may have been hoping that if enough people willed it, then Donald Trump would feel he had the ability to do it. If I'm being charitable to AA.
Yeah.
I'm going to point out that I predicted from like 2018 that Trump was never going to be the guy.
Yeah. Fair enough, Armin. You're not wrong. All right, guys. We're going to finish up shortly. And I'll just go around and ask you chaps if you have any last things to say. John?
No, thanks for having me on. It's been
Always.
entertaining. I've been the foil for a number of things, and I try
John,
and
John,
inject a bit of interest.
John, you're always welcome, mate. You always have sensible points to make, even if I don't always totally agree with them. No, truthful. George, Aussie?
I've said some pretty crazy things this stream, so I should probably have a bit of a disclaimer. Any and every opinion that may be construed as hateful is not genuinely held by me. I just believe in reasonable government.
It's just a joke, bro.
It's a prank, bro.
He's just Scottish. Don't worry about it.
Yeah.
Look, if Jimmy
I'm a
Carr
big
can
fan
call
of
the
Minecraft.
gypsies a positive of the Holocaust, then I think we're all right.
The opinions of John may or may not represent my own opinion.
That's not my opinion. That's Jimmy Carr's opinion. I
just go and look at Whoopi Goldberg, for God's sake. But yeah,
so yeah, but yeah.
Sorry,
Go on.
I was just gonna say, I hope everyone has a good weekend and all that. And that's all I have really got to say.
Yeah. I suppose for anyone from MI5 listening in, I just want to make it fully aware that I do totally endorse all the views espoused on this show.
But I do not.
but I'll also just ask John McNamara's question, which is, what's the panel's opinion on Michael Portillo? Behind the pig suit, is he based in trad? I enjoy his wholesome railway programs. I also like his railway and his hiking programs.
I like his railway and hiking stuff. Sure.
I think he had a day when he was probably a bit based, but that has long since passed.
Well, he had that thing about we should be our education program shouldn't be cringe. It should be like teaching people about Wellington,
British history.
Yeah.
One thing I'd like to mention,
for what it's worth, my A levels were about U.S. civil rights. So maybe he has a point there, but U.S. civil rights, post-war Britain, and how amazing it was, and yes, the American Revolution.
Talking about British history, we have one momentous event occurring over today and tomorrow, which is that we have the first British monarch to have served for 70 years. I think that's important.
I mean, there are some others here who are a bit more skeptical of that.
Silence.
Long may she reign.
I have no comment on that, to be honest.
No, good on her. Long may she reign.
Yeah, long may she reign, but that's the only comment I have on that. Yeah, I mean, Mark Collet's Big A, he said UK military. UK military is always good. They just don't have enough money, and they don't have enough armaments, and the British government's always ready to send them into wars where they'll die because they just don't have good enough equipment.
Yeah, 4D
sooner
chess move.
Spend it somewhere else.
Bump the military spending up to 20% and let's invade the Ukraine and keep it for ourselves.
Fuck the Ukraine. I don't want the Ukraine.
Slava Ukraine. Slava
I
Ukraine.
might take over Taiwan, but I don't want Ukraine.
I don't want a country full of slopes.
Yeah, come on. Some of those Chinese girls.
Have you
are
seen
really-
Ukrainian women, bro?
Some of those
Well, yeah,
Chinese girls are really cute, man. But
No, they're
anyway.
not.
Yes,
No,
they are.
Slava
Yes,
Ukraine.
they are.
Slava Ukraine.
There are cute girls in Ukraine too, but you know. But yeah, all right. I think we've probably done as much about this as we're going to do, unless anyone else has got anything to add.
No.
All right, guys. Let me just say that our long promised stream on John Chalmers' book, Splendid Isolation, British Foreign Policy 1874-1914, also sometimes known as Britain and joining the First World War, will be next Thursday at about 9 p.m. UK time, which will be 8 a.m. Friday Australian time. So we're going to do that, which I hope will be a good stream. It's certainly the one stream I've been looking forward to do for about the last 3 or 4 months. Thanks for joining. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe, and hit that little bell button. Someone told me I need to say that.
Everyone ring Iron Duke's bell. Get on it.
Oh, go on, ring my bell, guys. But only if you.
I'm gonna make that my text now. Go on, ring my bell, guys.
Go and ring my bell, guys, but only if you're a woman between about 25 and 35 with very long blonde hair and reasonable tits. Don't worry unless you do.
Well, that excludes 99.9% of your audience, then I'm sure.
Oh man, that excludes all of the audience, but there we go. Stephen JJ James just unsubbed. Good on you, man. All right. I'm going to play us out with a tune as I always do. So let's do it. Here we go.
Britons always loyally declaim about the way we rule the waves. Every Briton's song is just the same when singing of a soldier's brave. All the world has heard it, wonders why we sing, and some have learned the reason why. We're not forgetting it, we're not letting it fade away or gradually die. Fade away or gradually die. It's the soldiers of the Queen, my land, Queen, my land, who've seen my land in the fight for England's glory land. Of its world wide glory, let us sing. And when we say we've always won, and when they ask us how it's done, we'll proudly point soldiers of the
Okay, ladies and gents, that was Soldier of the Queen, and the illustration was the 79th Cameron Highlanders getting new colours from Queen Victoria in 1873. Thank you very much for joining us this evening. We will be back next Thursday with our stream on John Chalmers' book, Splendid Isolation, British Foreign Policy, 1874-1914. And as you will discover if you come and watch that stream, as far as I'm concerned, the original sin of Britain and the Empire was joining World War I in 1914 to save France of all stupid things for the Brits to do. But there we go. We'll see you then. In the meantime, go well. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel and hit that little bell icon so you get all the notifications. And good evening.